We're hearing a lot about environmental crises at the moment, and I guess we're all in a position of what can we potentially do about this? How can we reduce carbon footprints? Well, we've discovered that amongst some of the highest energy consumers are the hotel and hospitality industry, of whom anything up to 80% of their costs are things like energy for heating, for things like water heating and that kind of thing. Now, I happen to be working with a couple of guys, both called Mark. One's called Mark Hibbert, one's called Mark Brammer, and they work on solar modelling in order to ascertain the design to place solar panels on the roofs of hotels, which can reduce their energy costs significantly without any of this feed-in tariff stuff, which doesn't seem to be working in at the moment, because these hotels are using so much energy that they would use up anything that the solar panels create from the roof. So just to give you an idea of how this is done and what the kind of return on investment seems to be for it, because this is where you can actually make money or save money whilst helping the environment, I'm going to show you what's being done. So this is Mark. Hello, Mark. So Mark, tell us what you're doing here.
So this is a design tool known as PV Sol. You can design things in 2D or like you got here in 3D. So give you a sense of what this is. These elements here are buildings which form a hotel we're looking at towards Turnberry. And then just really all I've done is done a survey and then designed this model around the survey using both on-site measurements and then work using Google Earth. So I'm going to have a look. I'll just go on the overhead view here. So this is the actual layout of the panels. Mm-hmm. This is facing south, this down the page here. And these are around about, I can't remember how many panels now, but nearly 300 panels, which we could potentially put on this structure, this hotel, and which would provide at least 20% of the energy required. It's the hotel uses a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And it's got a large roof space, so it's perfect. It's ideal. So. And it also means there's very little goes actually back to the grid. Basically, everything that's produced on the roof goes into be used by the hotel.
Good.
It's perfect.
So what we'll do is we'll go over to the other Mark here. We'll talk about, that's a lot of panels. So how much is the investment in that? And therefore, how long could we expect to take to actually get this investment back? This is where you start to see the clever numbers. This is Mark Brammer.
Hello.
So show me what we're looking at.
So basically what we're looking at here is, so once Mark's done the design, he sends me a spreadsheet that's got all of the output numbers. It tells us basically within a year how many kilowatt hours that solar system's going to generate. Mm-hmm. So then what we can do is essentially try to translate energy into money. Mm. So we're getting a certain amount in, and in this case we have very large amounts of usage for this particular hotel. Mm-hmm. So they'll just they'll gobble up everything we give them. Mm-hmm. But we can look at things like electric vehicles, we can look at powering a battery, we can look at powering hot water. But essentially for us, in order to really make the economics work, we try to use the building like its own battery and find as many uses within the building to make it pay off. So what that looks like here, so this is kind of after we do all our clever assessments and we look at, the rate of energy inflation, things like that. So these are all our project costs down here. So this total project is looking to be around 90,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. And this is the payback so each one of these is a different array within the whole project. Mm-hmm. And our total return will be somewhere around $250,000 on an investment of about 90.
So when you say that that's the total project cost, is that including the actual panels themselves,
so
installation,
that's panels,
planning?
Installation, cabling, everything.
Everything. Wow.
Now, I would say this is a particularly good site. In other words, the building doesn't require any special planning permission. It's we don't have to put a huge scaffold up. We do have to put a scaffold up, but it's not, it's a one-story building.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of shading issues. The roofs, this roof here, like you can see in yellow, is perfectly oriented almost directly south. So the efficiency of that in and of itself leads to a huge amount of energy generation from what's installed.
But this is why the planning is so important, I'm assuming, is to get the maximum yield out of it and the quickest return on investment.
Well, right.
So is this the break-even point here?
So the break-even point, yeah. So between around year 5, we start breaking even on some parts of the project, and then other parts maybe about year 9. But I would say that this is only looking at things like electricity. If there's any excess, so let's say during the summer when we've got a huge amount of excess energy and maybe it's not all being used, what we can then do is redirect it to the hot water heating. Now, in this particular building, they're using oil to heat hot water.
Right.
So we can offset that directly. So there's nothing about this that's going to go back to the grid. So you could actually add a little bit of a boost there.
So tell me what the overall return here is.
The overall return, well, I don't have a total number worked out, but it's somewhere around £250,000, £250,000.
So if we were to take this to a year-on-year median, if someone were to invest in this on behalf of somebody else's property, they could potentially be making what kind of return in their initial £90,000 investment?
Well, I mean, if you had the money directly to invest in the capital budget, then you'd probably be making about the equivalent of taking all that money and putting it in a bond around 5 to 6%.
Okay.
It depends on different elements of the project, and obviously, we have to be a little bit. That's subject to a lot of speculation.
I understand, but in this case, what's the kind of median return on year on year?
Well, for each one of these projects, I mean, you'd be making somewhere between, probably at 10 to 15,000 pounds every year.
10 to 15,000 pounds a year on an initial £90,000 investment.
Well, and we've seen the bills. So the bills for this place, the electricity bill alone is £50,000 a year.
Right, a year.
So essentially, this building, the operators of this building are already shelling out the equivalent of £50,000 every year, paying rent essentially to the utility to get this.
And this is based on just the roof space. You could potentially set up a ground array or something like that to make up most of the rest of it.
Technically, yeah. I mean, and there's nothing. This whole area is, there's no shading issues. It's right next to golf courses and farms, so there's not a lot of trees. It's ready to see. So yeah, there's lots of really good opportunities for us to do more. I mean, this whole property could very easily be off the grid if we wanted to be.
Okay, so what I'm really getting at here is that for all that people talk about ethical investment, if you're going to invest in anything, this is the kind of thing that I would suggest investing on, because in terms of the uncertainty of investment, there isn't really any uncertainty here. This is being based around people who are experts in the field, who've been doing it for a number of years, who know what the results are going to be, who can tell you how much you'll invest and how much you're going to make year on year with a real degree of certainty. So, and this is based on prevailing weather patterns. None of this is guesswork. So if we're going to talk about saving the environment, I think that this is an extremely good place to start and continue and expand. For those of you who have money to invest, this is where I would recommend you invest it.